Welcome to Tuesday's edition of COVID-19. We are marking a second straight day of cases on the 500 level today, with cluster infections at diverse venues of both professional and private settings. And against this backdrop, Korea's entertainment industry appears to be offering some relief. We have details later on in the program. Let's start now with the pandemic updates. Now, so do start us off, that is.
Sure, Sunny. There's been a slight uptick in cases this Tuesday, with 549 infections counted as of 12 a.m. That's 17 more than Monday. And it's also 17 more domestic transmissions, as the number of imported cases remains unchanged. And also the average in domestic infections in the past week remains almost unchanged at 622.1. Now, in the past 2 days, infections were lingering in the 500s, but we may see a rise as the week progresses, as we have seen last week past Tuesday. Now, onto our map now. Triple digits were again reported in the capital Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, 18 in Incheon and Gangwon-do province, and also almost 30 cases down in Gyeongsangnam-do province, as well as Busan. And with that, the nation has a total of 115,195 infections. And let's also get a check on our vaccination updates. Over 120,000 people have been vaccinated on Monday. That is a significant rise in daily jabs on the back of an expansion of vaccination centers and also more people subject to inoculations. Now, with that, 3.15% of the nation's population has received at least one shot of the vaccination. And amid concerns over vaccine supply shortages, the nation's health minister Kwon Deok-chol assured on Tuesday that the government is doing its utmost in making sure that the vaccination program goes ahead as planned, aiming for 3 million vaccinations by the end of this month and 12 million in the first half of the year.
Right, let's keep our fingers crossed for that, as many countries are struggling with their vaccine rollouts amid a surge in COVID-19 infections, according to the World Health Body.
Right, Sunny. Despite vaccination programs going ahead in many places around the world, the highest number of coronavirus cases for a single week has been recorded, with the majority of cases reported in Europe, the Americas, and Southeast Asia.
Last week, new cases of COVID-19 increased for the 8th week in a row, with more than 5.2 million cases reported. Deaths rose for the 5th straight week, and more than 3 million deaths have now been reported to WHO.
And here we are seeing the latest figures as of noon Korea time. More than 142.6 million cases in total. And as the WHO chief said, we have a total of 3 million fatalities. And it just took 3 months to get from 2 million to 3 million. And by far, the fastest rise in cases is being observed in India, which recorded over 270,000 infections in just a day. And that's also a record high, with the capital New Delhi now under a 6-day lockdown since late Monday. And with that, the total figure in India stands at 15.3 million. There's also been resurgences in Turkey, Spain, as well as Argentina. All of these over 20,000 cases in a day. Turkey over 55,000 infections in the past 24 hours. And those are the updates I have for now. I'll see you back after the briefing. Sunny?
All right, so I'll see you back in a bit then. Right, back here in Korea, the growing presence of variants looks to further challenge containment efforts on the local front. For more on this, I have Kim Sung-yeon here in the studio with me. Welcome, Sung-yeon.
Good afternoon.
Right, then let's start with the latest on the variants here in the country.
Right, variants. So Korea has confirmed 70 new cases of these foreign variants in the course of the past week. That brings the total to 449, according to health authorities Monday, amid concerns that the country's fight against the pandemic may be aggravated by these more transmissible viruses. Now, authorities are saying they're bracing for a fresh uptick in COVID-19 cases triggered by the new variants coming from Britain, South Africa, and Brazil. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency said all 70 new variant cases reported last week were attributed to this trio of strains, which are known to be more transmissible. If we break them down by nationality, 41 of them are Koreans and 29 are foreigners, according to health authorities. By strain, the UK variant was the most prevalent, accounting for 64 cases, followed by 5 from South Africa and 1 from Brazil. Adding to these concerns, a so-called double mutant strain from India was first reported in Korea last week as well. Not much information has been provided yet on the extent of this particular outbreak, but according to the government on Monday, 9 cases of the Indian variant has been identified so far, all of which were confirmed among passengers flying in from India.
Right, Song-yeon. Now, given that reality, Korea, I believe, has some tougher entry protocols for those from high-risk countries.
That's correct. So this is to curb the influx of foreign variants coming into Korea from other countries. And the government says passengers departing for Korea from high-risk countries will be subject to quarantine at designated isolation facilities starting this Thursday. Let's take a listen to what KDCA Chief Youn Yuh-jung had to say about this.
All foreign arrivals from high-risk countries will be subject to quarantine at designated government facilities starting April 22nd. And this applies to those at risk of transmitting the South African variant, which is known to lessen the effects of vaccines and treatments.
In addition, Korea has extended its ban on passenger flights from the UK, which has been in place since December 23rd until this Thursday. Also, all arrivals, both foreigners and locals, have been required since late February to submit negative PCR test results issued within 72 hours of their departure for Korea.
Meanwhile, Song-yeon, on the vaccination front, what's the latest with regard to Korea's rollout of AstraZeneca vaccines?
Yes, Sunny. So let me first give you an update on the supply situation of these AstraZeneca vaccines. Health authorities say Korea will bring in another 7 million doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccines, which is enough for 3.5 million people between May and June of this year. Now, AstraZeneca vaccines will make up about 60% of the country's rollout by the end of June, with the goal of vaccinating 12 million out of the country's total population of 52 million. The KDCA confirmed that AstraZeneca vaccines for 1 million people will arrive in the country in May, and those for another 2.5 million people in June. The country may need every dose of the planned shipments, with health authorities expanding the rollout of AstraZeneca vaccines to members of the general public. Starting Monday, the country began administering AstraZeneca vaccines to care workers for the disabled, seniors, and veterans, as well as pilots and cabin crew members aged 30 and above. Airline workers are expressing hope that vaccinations could signal the resumption of international travel, which has been on hold for more than a year.
All right, Song-yeon, as always, thank you very much for the coverage.
Thanks for having me.
Right, it's time now for the regular briefing on the COVID-19 situation here in Korea for this Tuesday. Right, the briefing's about to start. We'll come back to you afterwards.
First of all, we have Director Lee Sang-won with the explanation on today's briefing. Let us now begin our regular briefing for the COVID-19 situation here in South Korea for April 20th, Tuesday. As of today midnight, we have 529 new local infections and 20 new imported cases. With this, the total case load now stands at 115,195. And yesterday alone, we had 85,537 tests being conducted nationwide, and among them at the makeshift testing centers in the metropolitan area, we carried out 41,766 tests, confirming 81 patients. And we also have 753 more people being discharged, while 8,166 still remain in quarantine undergoing treatment. And we have 10 more patients with critical or severe conditions, standing at 109. We had one additional fatality. I extend my deepest condolences to the deceased and the members of the bereaved families. And as for the recent major local clusters, please refer to the press kits. And lately, the trend of the infections increase were not attributed to large cluster infections. However, we have seen many sporadic outbreaks and also cluster infections nationwide. And also we would like to ask you to understand the environment which could also increase the risks of infections, and also we need to refrain from being exposed to such environments. Against this backdrop, we are seeing a rapid surge in the number of cases stemming from indoor sports gyms. So here are some details of the risk factors. Starting from January until 19th of April, we have seen the cluster infections stemming from the indoor sports facilities, and we have had about 1,163 people being confirmed at 40 cluster infections related to indoor sports facilities. And we also had in January 4 cluster infections and 9 cluster infections in February and 15 cluster infections in March with over 400 cases. And also until the 19th, we have had about 12 new cluster infections and also confirming more than 200 patients. And we have had 18 indoor sports facilities, and we also had other dance studios and also other facilities, related facilities as well. And at the indoor sports facility, we would like to explain to you some details. And we have also carried out a computer simulation with a company, and we would like to provide you some details of the risk factors, especially related to this case. And this is the analysis of the fitness center risk factor, and here is Mr. Park Young-jun. And this specific analysis was carried out in Jeonju, and we carried out this analysis for the span of 17 days, starting from the late February, and we have seen analyzed the results, and a total of 80 people were infected during the 17 days. And after the first index case have been identified, we have seen local infections at 4 different facilities, including cafes and so forth. And in particular, at indoor sports facilities, people kept the 2-meter distance. However, they were also exposed to the virus, and they also contracted the virus. And we have seen through the simulation of the aerosol travel, and we also carried out our genetic analysis, and we have seen we have done the simulation, and we have made a video about this simulation. And this situation resulted because they did not have good ventilation, and if one person coughed in this kind of environment, we could see that the aerosol travel was also intensified. And as for this specific simulation, they had poor ventilation within the indoors facility, and we are also considering the condition that somebody had coughed, and we have seen the spread of the virus. And this is the specific case as for a cluster infection in relation to an indoor sports facility. And we have made the similar indoor interior design of that specific facility, and also we have analyzed this through our CCTV footages as well. And we are also based on the condition that this person has coughed, and we are seeing how far the distance of their aerosol has traveled. And let us now continue to carry on with our briefing. And continuing on, here are some updates on our status on the COVID-19 vaccination. As of today midnight, we have 121,234 more people being administered with their first dose of COVID-19 vaccine, with the total number standing at 1,639,490. We have one more person who have received their second dose, and a total of 60,500 286 have been administered with their second dose. And as for the eligible recipients of the second queue, we have seen more than 85,000 people receiving their doses, and a total of 18% of these eligible recipients have finished their inoculation. And currently we are rolling out vaccines to those people in the senior citizen group as well as care providers. And as for them, the vaccination rate stands at about 15% and 53% respectively. And starting from March, we have also rolled out vaccines for residents and workers at nursing hospitals aged over 65, and their vaccination rate stands at about 62% and 68% respectively. And as for the first queue target, we have reached about 89% of vaccination rate at nursing hospitals. And as for first responders, we have reached 85.6%. And at hospitals, 89% have finished their inoculation of the first dose of COVID-19 vaccines. And at the COVID-19 treatment hospitals, they are being rolled out with the second dose right now. And about 95 people have been administered with their first dose, and another 94 have been administered with their second dose. And we have a total of 12,395 adverse responses that have been reported after the inoculation, and majority of them, about 98.4%, were mild and common symptoms. We had 124 suspected cases of anaphylaxis, 31 suspected cases of severe cases, and 49 cases of death have been reported. And here are some procurement of the vaccines. As for the Pfizer vaccines, tomorrow we will have about the vaccine doses for about 240,000 people to arrive tomorrow morning. And with this, we have completed the arrival of about 1.5 million. And starting from next week, we will also have more continued arrival of these Pfizer vaccines going forward. And last week, we have seen a global increase of the new cases, and this has been on the rise on 8 consecutive weeks. And at the Southeast Asia and also in Europe and in Middle East, we are seeing a record high daily cases, and also in US, we are also seeing a record high numbers as well. In Iran, Bahrain, and also in other countries in the Pacific region, and also in India, we are also seeing major surges of these new cases. And we believe that these have been attributed to the early lockdown easing by companies, and also prolonged fatigue over the prolonged battle against the COVID-19, as well as as well as the new variants as well. And also during the past week, we have had about 622 cases on a daily basis here in South Korea, which is about 7.3% on week rise. And globally, we are seeing a rapid surge, and relatively here in South Korea, the rate of this increase is milder, and we also have less cases of the new variants. However, we cannot be optimistic about the current situation as experienced before. The COVID-19 infection can also spread at a very fast pace, just like wildfire. And it is very important that we take particular precautions for every case and infection here in the country. And looking at the trend here in South Korea, we see a small cluster infection stemming from families and acquaintances being the majority sources of these infections lately. We have seen also multi-use facilities, including restaurants, pubs, as well as indoor sports facilities being vulnerable to the cluster infections as well. And we have also seen a relatively higher proportion of these cases coming from such public facilities. And also we have seen in mid-February the proportion of these public use facilities accounted for about 26%. However, it has jumped to about 50% right now in April. And we would like to also ask you to refrain from going to multi-use facilities that are frequented by people, and also wash your hands and wear your face mask, and also follow by any other personal hygiene measures. In particular, if you have any clinical symptoms of COVID-19 like coughing, fever, or sore throat, please do not go to school or work, and also visit a nearby screening clinic and get tested as soon as possible. And you shall never visit multi-use facilities if you have such symptoms. And before you have the results of the test, you should refrain from going to school or workplace, and also keep a distance even at home as well.
4월 15일부터
Starting from the 15th of April, we have opened a new 104 vaccination centers, and right now, as of today, we have designated hospitals, and about 1,790 hospitals have been designated nationwide, which is speeding up our vaccination rollout. And starting from yesterday, we have been rolling out the vaccines to the care providers as well as flight attendants. And starting from next week, we will also provide a vaccination to the people who are working at hospitals or pharmacies, as well as essential social workers and people with dialysis. And we believe that we will have even accelerated speed of the vaccination going forward. And until the day we reach our herd immunity, we ask you to comply with the quarantine measures for the benefits of yourself and others. We ask you to keep this in mind. The quarantine authorities will also be based on scientific evidence, and we will also exert our full efforts to contain the spread of the virus. Thank you very much.
지금부터 기자님들 질문에 답변 드리는 시간 갖겠습니다.
Right, so that was Tuesday's afternoon briefing. Do tell us a bit about it.
Sure. Well, there was an increase in infections linked to public use facilities, and especially at indoor sports facilities. So between January and April 19th, there was a total of 40 cluster infections linked to indoor sports facilities. That's a total of 1,163 individual cases. And especially there were high risks at indoor fitness centers. And the analysis shows us that in January, there were 4 cluster infections linked to such fitness centers, and then 9 in February, 15 in March, and already 12 in April. This is why an official, Park Young-jun, another official, showed a video with a simulation of how aerosol transmissions can happen at such fitness centers. So if there's poor ventilation, these aerosol transmissions can happen after someone coughs within 2 minutes. So despite 2 meters of distance, social distancing measures, these infections can happen. So this is why the officials are calling on especially vigilance at such facilities.
I see. All right, so thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Right, post-inoculation adverse conditions have been reported in quite a few places worldwide, and 25 WHO member states, including Korea, have initiated compensation programs to better address these unfortunate cases. We have details in this report.
Vaccine hesitancy and safety concerns are on the rise amid growing reports of adverse reactions and post-inoculation deaths across the globe. Korea has rolled out a state damage compensation scheme based on an existing system that has been in place since 1955 to provide restitution for vaccine-related injuries.
역학조사 결과 예방접종과의 인관성이 확인되는 피해 사례에 대해서는 예방접종 피해 보상 제도에 따라 국가가 치료비, 간병비, 장애 및 사망 일시 보상금 등 국가 보상을 시행하도록 하겠습니다.
The compensation scheme, which was unveiled in March, provides roughly $390,000 and $210,000 respectively in case of death and permanent disability as a result of adverse vaccine reactions. So what are the conditions that have to be met in order for victims to be eligible for compensation?
코로나 바이러스 그 백신과 그 사망이라든가 어떤 상해를 입었을 때 그 상해와 인과관계가 인정돼야 보상을 받을 수가 있습니다. 아나필락틱 쇼크처럼 홍조가 발생하거나 기침이 발생하거나 또는 기도 부종이 발생해서 사망한다고 하면 그런 경우에는 코로나 백신의 부작용이기 때문에 보상을 해야 되는 그런 경우에 해당되고요. 당뇨나 합병증 이런 걸로 인해서 사망했다라고 하면 그거는 백신과 인과관계가 없기 때문에 보상의 대상이 될 수는 없습니다.
Any individual who's experienced possible adverse reactions can apply for compensation, with a ruling handed out within 120 days following a review of the evidence by the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Board. So what determines the presence of a clear causal link between vaccines and adverse reactions?
우리가 역학적 연관성과 인과성 두 가지를 얘기하는데요. 연관성은 예방접종을 맞은 군과 안 맞은 군을 비교를 해서 임상시험에서 비교하는 겁니다. 그래서 예방접종을 맞은 군이 안 맞은 군에 비해서 통계적으로 더 많이 발생한다. 그러면 첫 번째 연관성이 있는 거고요. 그 연관성이 백신 때문인지 원인 결과를 분석해서 밝히게 되면 인과성이 있다. 또 어떤 다른 요인에 의해서 생길 가능성은 없는지도 봐야 되고요. 한 7가지 정도 조건이 있는데 그런 조건들을 만족하게 되면 이게 백신에 의한 이상 반응이다라고 인과성을 평가하게 됩니다.
So is compensation out of reach in cases where no clear causal relationships exist?
인과관계가 있는 것으로 추산될 수 있는 경우에는 보상을 합니다. 의학자들이 이거는 임상적으로 이런 증상이 발생할 수 있다라는 어떤 객관적인 증거가 있을 때 그거를 법원에서도 규범적으로 추단을 할 수 있다, 인과관계가 있다고 볼 수 있다 이렇게 판단을 하게 되는 겁니다.
The Korean government has promised an open and transparent process in its investigation into the possible links between vaccines and adverse reactions to minimize any public confusion.
정부가 사망 사례에 대해서 아무런 얘기도 안 하고 그건 관련이 없는 거하고 다 덮어놓게 되면 그러면 본인 스스로는 아닐 거라고 알고 있지만 계속 불안감이 높아지잖아요. 그러면 예방접종을 안 하게 된단 말이에요. 서로 충분히 이야기하고 또 조금이라도 의심스러운 부분이 있으면 이야기하고 정부는 지금까지 밝혀진 부분을 다 투명하게 공개하고 이런 게 된 거죠.
The government has also created a monitoring system run jointly by the KDCA and the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety to identify vaccine injury cases and review their eligibility for compensation. It is hoped that protections guaranteed by Korea's National Vaccine Injury Scheme can help soothe public concerns and engender more participation in the country's inoculation drive.
Youn from Minari.
Every award is meaningful, but this one, especially recognized by British people, known as very snobbish people, and they approve me as a good actor, so I'm very, very privileged.
After being postponed 2 months amid the pandemic, the 93rd Academy Awards will take place on the 25th of April in Los Angeles, with actress Youn Yuh-jung in attendance this year. Also, this past weekend, BTS held a special event for fans to beat COVID-19 blues. For more, here in the studio, I have music critic Kim Young-dae. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
And joining our talk virtually is Professor So Jae-young at the Seoul Institute of the Arts. It's a pleasure to have you with us on the show.
Hi, nice to be here.
Right then. Let's begin here in the studio then. So this past Saturday afternoon, BTS sought to share some of its past concerts for free. The streaming event noted a high of 2.7 million concurrent viewers at one time, I hear. Now, having said that, do you believe that online concerts are taking root 1 year into the pandemic?
Yeah, first of all, it's a tremendous success. I don't know if it was 5 hours, 8 hours. It's marathon-like, performance. But still, I'm not quite sure it was just BTS, or it was just K-pop, or kind of more universal trend for that could be applicable to other type of genres. Last time I was here, I mentioned that online concert and online platform itself would not completely replace the offline experience. I still feel the same because, well, like you said, it's been a thing for this past year during the pandemic, but people more and more, they're still looking for the opportunity to be there with them in-person experience. So, but the thing is, they start to recognize that this online concert and online experience are part of their life. They have these other options. So I think beyond the pandemic, I think this online concert and platform will be a kind of new subgenre of the performance art.
Right, hopefully, right? Now, in the film industry, Professor Youn Yuh-jung received a formal invitation from the Academy as a nominee for Best Supporting Actress for her role in the film Minari. Now, she's the first Korean to be nominated in an acting category at the Oscars, which I believe is earmarked a third of its budget on COVID-19 safety. Now, first up then, Professor So, what are her chances of winning that award?
Well, I don't want to be in the business of predicting winners, but I think she has a very good chance of winning this year's Oscars in Best Supporting Actress role. But I want to also highlight the fact that last year's Oscars, we had director Bong Joon-ho win for Parasite, and then it's almost unprecedented that we would have a second year where we have a batch of films. Basically, we have a whole bunch of nominations. We have 6 nominations for Minari, and the director Isaac Chung, his Korean name is Chung Isak. He's up for basically Best Picture, Best Director, Original Screenplay, and also here in the screen you can see Steve Yeun, who's up for Best Actor as well for the male category. So I think it's a really fantastic time for Korean cinema. And I want to sort of highlight one other section that nobody's sort of seeing, which is the best short for animation is also a Korean person named Eric Oh. He has a short called Opera, which is also being nominated.
I see. Meanwhile, back in the music arena, Mr. Kim, BTS made history as the first K-pop act to secure a Grammy nomination. Now, like CNN pointed out, they didn't win that award, but they won the night as they lit up the night with their performance. What can you tell us about this recent recognition on the global stage for BTS?
Yeah, a lot of first here. First Asian, first K-pop, first Asian to be nominated in the pop category, not world music or classical music. Well, there are a lot of other cases that Asian people, Asian musicians won or nominated in the Grammy Award, but this is the first time Asian artists actually being nominated in the pop category, which is more like a kind of general popular music in U.S. pop industry. So I think it itself is a tremendous success. But personally, I have a problem with the media's attitude toward this result, because a lot of newspapers and media labeled it a failure to win the award instead of success to be nominated. Professor So would tell the same thing, but when you look at the resume of a certain artist or actor and actress, you would say that, well, this actor is 5-time Oscar nominated actress or 3-time Grammy nominated artist instead of 3-time nominated but not getting an award kind of
That's
artist.
a good point.
So I think you definitely have to remember that this is, first time, and it's a very historic achievement in terms of that they actually crossed over the market, race, ethnicity to be acknowledgement in the mainstream media, mainstream award in the U.S. So definitely, huge leap, step forward for Asian music and Korean pop music in general. But last year, Bong Joon-ho commented on this type of situation, saying that an Oscar is a local award. So honor is definitely an honor, but I don't think it should be an ultimate goal for the Korean artist or Korean musician eventually.
Right. Professor, so I hear a breath of fresh air has been blowing at local movie theatres, amid international acclaim, that is, over Youn's performance and over the movie Minari itself. Now, before you tell us a bit about that, can I give our viewers a quick reminder that no eating is allowed in movie theatres here in Korea, and do remember to leave a seat empty between patrons and parties when you're at the theatre. Now, Professor, so do tell us a bit about the impact of the recent international attention on local theatres.
Well, I think Minari has definitely been sort of a catalyst for Korean audiences to go see movies. Last year, as you know, when COVID hit, it was pretty devastating. I think the Korean industry went down in sales like 70%. And so basically, one of the factors that's different from other cinemas is that although we were hit very hard with COVID, because of social distancing and government guidelines, most of the theater chains like CGV or Lotte or Megabox, they stayed open during the COVID crisis. And so, of course, there's social distancing, so you can only have 50% audience participation in the movie theaters. But unfortunately, people were afraid to kind of cluster around. But this year, it's kind of a different situation. I think it started with the Pixar animation Soul that came out. So that sort of got people going to the theater. But Minari is surprisingly, for a very low budget film, I think because Koreans are very interested in Oscar-nominated award-winning films, they definitely started flocking to the theater. I checked the box office today, and it was around 900,000 audience members that bought tickets to go see the movie, which is amazing. It actually beat out Godzilla versus Kong, which is amazing. So I think right now we're seeing sort of a trend where more people are starting to go see movies in theater, which is a very, I think, hopeful situation for business, and also just the fact that people are just getting out of the house and wanting to sort of be around other people when they watch a movie.
Right. Also, BTS's record label, Mr. Kim, recently bought the US company that manages Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande and other big names.
Yeah.
Now, Hype has said the deal will create, and I quote, a new paradigm in the music industry. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, I just can't believe that this happened, actually. You know, you would not believe this news, 5 years ago, even a few years ago, because it would definitely demonstrate a kind of symbolic movement, from the past to the future. Now, Korean companies having claimed their presence in the global market, but beyond that, they kind of showcase their power, commercial power, by acquiring a company like Ithaca. Well, for your information, Ithaca is a holding company that has several different type of labels and other companies. And Scooter Braun, the former chair of the Ithaca, is a notoriously famous guy, known for the ability to recruit a teen pop idol star like Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande and other pop stars. And his company, SB Project, is probably one of the top tier company that has many artist management within that. So Hive's acquisition of Ithaca is great, significance in that is it demonstrates the cultural reversal, reversal of cultural traffic. And now it's not just U.S., dominating other the markets, but Korea has its own space in this global, landscape. But if you look at this situation really closely, it is more important that the capital and the know-how are shared between two countries. It's not just sharing the top-tier artists or celebrities, but for example, for Scooter Braun, who already had a huge success in the U.S. pop music, but he believes that in the future, the know-how of Hype, Big Hit previously, and their know-how, and especially the know-how of managing social media and fandoms, would be more important than other type of technology right now in pop music. So I think, as visionary as he is, he definitely predicts that in the future, K-pop's know-how would be the thing, even in the United States.
Right. And how will this remarkable achievement by Hype perhaps affect the local music industry, do you think?
Well, I think it's already happening in a lot of different areas. I think this type of collaboration, acquisition would be happening very soon in other parts. For instance, Big Hit already established a new joint venture with UMG, Universal Music Group, one of the top music labels in the US, to create a very specific label for K-pop groups in the US. So I think this collaboration between US pop industry and American, Korean pop industry to make more K-pops in the US would be a kind of newer trend, because at this point, K-pop is not just one of those Asian exotica type of culture in the US, but increasingly becoming more of a kind of legitimate subcategory of American pop music. So you can definitely see a kind of bigger thing in the future.
Right,
definitely.
we'll keep our fingers crossed for that, right? Professor, so the 22nd Jeonju International Film Festival will kick off next week under the slogan Film Goes On. Organizers are planning a hybrid format of online and offline screenings, given, of course, COVID-19 prevention efforts. What more can you tell us about this upcoming event?
Well, I think it's good news that, as you know, last year because of COVID, all the film festivals went online. And they were shown on OTTs and things like that. But I think I love the slogan of this year, which is Film Goes On, and it's combining theatrical viewing with online screenings as well. So I believe this year they have 186 films from 48 countries. And basically, it's 118 feature films and 68 shorts. And basically, it's going to go to about 4 venue theaters in the city of Jeonju, and which is about 200 kilometers from Seoul. And we'll be watching a lot of it also if you are interested online as well. And I think one of the highlights is that, as Jeonju is sort of the art film festival, we're really famous for worldwide cinema. This year, there's a lot of films from the Middle East, Asia, and basically the Korean competition section has first and second feature directors who are making a world premiere this year. And so we have a movie about handicapped, a poet who is physically challenged called Corridors. And then there's a documentary called Coming to You about a transgender and gay children and their parents. So it's kind of an unusual mix of stuff. And I think one of the great things about this festival is that this year, I believe it's about 40 to 45% are female directors. So we have, for the first time, a very diverse group of films that are going to be showcased.
Right, that is good to know. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim, an interesting phenomenon in the music arena is that related to K-pop group Brave Girls, who've been securing much attention in recent days after a YouTube video of a song.
Right.
Now, let me get this correct. They released the song in 2017, and it went viral recently.
Right.
Tell us more about this.
Well, there are a lot of layers, but I'll make it quick. one of the reasons that I guess is that it's a pandemic and YouTube, combination of both. Because during the pandemic, more and more people are using the YouTube as a main tool consuming music. So they're not influenced by the so-called legacy media or traditional media like radio or television, but their taste and choice of music are predominantly influenced by the YouTube, especially YouTube algorithm. So they kind of accidentally fall in love with the music all of a sudden, and for them, it's a kind of good thing because, I mean, they believe, for ordinary people, they believe that a lot of music are overlooked because of the lack of exposure and other environment in the industry. So in this situation, YouTube make them to discover this new music, and they believe that this is good music to listen to actually. So during the pandemic and a new type of consuming music, using YouTube and YouTube algorithm, so I think this will become a kind of new thing in the business. I mean, rediscovering, the going to the chart again after a lot of year passed. So it's very interesting.
I know, because it was 4 years.
Right.
Right. Meanwhile, Professor, so what efforts are being made by those in the film industry to better adapt to the prolonged pandemic?
Well, I think you ask a very important question. Right now, because there was a very lack of audience participation because of COVID in Korean cinema, what a lot of movies had to do was rely on try to get the movies basically through streaming services. So Netflix kind of really swooped in and took up a lot of Korean cinema. For example, there's a movie called, Space Sweepers, which is a big blockbuster movie that was ready to be shown in the theaters. And of course, they spent so much money on the production side that they knew that if they released it theatrically, they would have a disaster on their hands. So ended up selling it to Netflix. But what's happening right now is there's a backlog of a lot of Korean cinema that were made basically in 2019 and 2020 that it's still, they're wondering what to do with opening that up in the theaters. And of course, our country used to be that, we would call it over 10 million box office tickets would be sold for a lot of the big hits in Korean cinema. And now there's a sort of a trepidation and a fear amongst all the producers and also the production companies and distribution conglomerates, thinking that that era of people going to the theaters in that mass amount is over. So what we're trying to see is sort of a lot of production companies are trying to diversify methods of distributing their films. So it'd be partially with theatrical and also streaming services like Wave, OTT services like Netflix and Watch. These are sort of other outlets for them to show it. But right now it's kind of an experimental stage. So I know some people at a very famous production company / distribution company called New, and they're right now trying to figure out a new business model in a sense to try to combat this situation, and they are diversifying their content so that it will not just rely primarily on theatrical release, but also they'll go to streaming services, or they will start using it for other online type of content distribution ideas. So I think right now there is money to be served, but at the same time we're sort of at this experimental stage. I think it's true for even Hollywood and also big film industries like China as well. So we'll see with vaccinations sort of happening. I hope that we get back to the levels that we used to do, but I'm afraid that people still are afraid to be around each other. So once we have that herd immunity happening and we have everybody vaccinated, hopefully people will come back to the theaters and we can really see a movie together, because I think a movie is meant to be seen on a big screen with a lot of people. So you can kind of breathe together, laugh together, cry together. I think that's what movies are supposed to do, and it's different when you just watch it at home.
Right. All right, Professor, so thank you very much for your time and your thoughts, and Mr. Kim here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Right, now music and movies continue to boost morale amid the pandemic, with many hoping for a prompt return to days when we can enjoy them thoroughly in person. Thank you for watching.